Nuno is the new manager at Nottingham Forest, and he has a tough task ahead of him. Halfway through the season, and Forest sit just above the relegation zone, but they could face a points deduction after being charged with breaching the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. Forest have already gotten some good results since Nuno went in charge, defeating Newcastle and Manchester United. Some transfer rumors have the club using what's left of their budget to sign players who are looking to move away. A perfect example of that would be Gio Reyna, getting limited play time at Dortmund, but an exceptional talent that could thrive in the Premier League. But with us taking on a longer term project with Nuno, I want to help develop our youth academy, adding 2 5-star scouts, and most importantly, one of those coming from Portugal. Nuno's got a track record of signing high potential Portuguese talents, and it's where we'll set up our first scouting network for the rest of the season. With simulating results up to January, I tried to get the club close to where they currently sit in the Premier League standings. As far as the top half of the table goes, Manchester City are sharing the top spot with Liverpool as far as points go. We've got to find a way to turn around squad morale, a lot of unhappy players, and even a few of our loan players being recalled back to their parent club. Another thing we're doing for realism is loaning out Awoniyi. He's currently injured and not available for Forest, so adding a starting striker has to be a priority for us. I turned to Wolves, the former club of Nuno Santos, and Sasha Kalajic might be on his way out, another talent that isn't getting a whole lot of play time, but of course they do have a Portuguese striker that was brought in for a big 40 million price tag just a few seasons ago, hasn't yet fulfilled that potential in Fabio Silva. His track record for Wolves hasn't been the best. Most recent seasons have seen him loaned out to clubs like Anderlecht, PSV, and now Rangers. Still a young player, only 21 years old. You never really know how his career could end up, but I think the Porto talent is definitely admired by Nuno, so return isn't off the cards. It's going to be a 10 million transfer fee to see us sign Fabio Silva. Showing great potential, we're hoping that dynamic potential can come into play and he can reach a rating well into the 80s. Not too much gameplay for this first season as we achieve an 11th place finish, 6th round exit in the FA Cup and a 3rd round exit in the Carabao Cup. Liverpool end up taking the Premier League title, 4 points clear of Manchester City. Arsenal and Newcastle United round out the Champions League spots. A pretty strong performance by us, comfortably mid-table with clubs like Everton and Wolves. And for the relegation zone, it's Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton Town, the 3 newly promoted sides that see the drop back to the Championship. Leicester City and Leeds will see the return to the Premier League, and it's Watford that were Championship playoff winners. It's a battle of a couple of Champions League sides, with Arsenal defeating Newcastle in the FA Cup final. Liverpool claimed the Carabao Cup, getting the win against Chelsea 2-0. Manchester City started their season with a trophy, defeating Sevilla in the UEFA Super Cup. They also won the Champions League against Arsenal 2-1, being the final scoreline. PSV defeat Atletico Madrid in the Europa League final, and for the Conference League, it's Fenerbahce that were victorious against Fiorentina. Morgan Gibbs-White is another former Wolves player that is now reunited with Nuno. He had 12 goals for the club, equal with Callum Hudson-Odoi. Not a bad second half of the season for Fabio Silva. In just 6 months, he managed 9 goals from 18 appearances. None of our players featuring in the top 15 for Premier League scores, but Mo Salah leads the way with 30 goals. And it's another appearance from Gibbs-White in the assist category. He led the club with 9 from 41. 7 of those coming in the Premier League, so him and Alanga will feature in the top 15. For clean sheets, there's the big decision about who will be starting at GK. I've decided to give the majority of starts to Matt Turner, who had 4 clean sheets over the course of the season. Sometimes I forget how many high potential players Forest have. Sangare, always a great talent in career mode. He's up to an 84 overall and a 34 million evaluation. Alanga with a +8 growth, up to a 27.5 million evaluation, and one youth academy talent to speak of. Andre Brito is a 68 rated goalkeeper from Portugal. The 17-year-old has 82 to 92 potential. Season 2 marks the first full year that Nuno has with this Nottingham Forest squad. Certainly some standout players in this team, but also some areas for improvement. For board objectives, we'll try to reach a Europa League spot via our Premier League performance, and we have just over 50 million in our transfer budget. We're going to kick off the signings in season 2 with a Portuguese talent from Sporting, Gonçalo Inácio. The rising star has been making waves in the world of football, and it's time to shine a spotlight on his accomplishments. A Sporting player through and through, he had a standout moment when he helped Sporting clinch the Liga Portuguesa title in 2021. Now, like many talents out of the Portuguese league, he's linked with the move away, and Premier League clubs are calling out. I think Inácio would thrive with Nuno's tactics because they also utilize a 3 center back formation like at Sporting. I don't know how we've managed it, but just 35 million for the transfer fee, significantly less than Inácio's 46 million valuation. This is a statement signing as he becomes a leader in our defense. Moving on to another talent from the Portuguese league, and I know we've signed a lot of goalkeepers lately, but that's going to continue with Andrew. At the start of the current season, Nottingham Forest brought in Flickiify from Benfica. Only time will tell how that ends up working out. I think at the current moment, Matt Turner is the better option. But as for Andrew, he's a talent from Botafogo out of Brazil, and I could easily see him making a transfer within Liga Portuguesa to a higher profile team like Porto if some of their top talents like Diogo Costa leaves. Another decent price tag of 20 million, more than Andrew's valuation, but he's going to give us competition at the goalkeeper spot. Another common characteristic of Nuno is signing some of his former players, and Hugo Bueno is a Wolves Academy talent that hasn't been guaranteed minutes and could easily see a move away within the Premier League or even on loan to a La Liga side. An interesting fact about him is that his highest rating is actually as a left midfielder. So with our attacking wingback system, he should be able to thrive with our tactics. For just 10 million, we've got a capable player that also has a real face skin, and in all honesty, I haven't seen him signed too often in career mode with great potential. I'm looking forward to see how he progresses at Nottingham Forest. Some of you that have been playing career mode for a few years like me know how big of a talent Adama Traore was just a few years ago. In 2020, he had a transfer market valuation of 40 million. Some interesting career moves since then, being loaned out to Barcelona, and in the most recent transfer window, he joined Fulham on a free in the summer of 2023. A unique combination of pace, dribbling, and strength. I think he's going to be a very exciting player that comes off the bench for us. And at just a 4 million price tag, we're not losing too much by risking something with this transfer. It's actually less than his valuation of 4.8 million, so some pretty good business for season 2. Of course, we need to discuss outgoing transfers as well, and we'll start with Flickiify, a transfer offer coming from West Ham, which I think is a pretty decent destination for him considering their need of a new goalkeeper. He'll leave for 30 million, and that'll be added directly to our transfer budget for future years. Lewis O'Brien heads to Crystal Palace for 6 million. Emmanuel Dennis joining Fenerbahce on a 5 million transfer fee. Harry Tuflo will also be joining the Eagles at Crystal Palace as he embarks on that journey for 2.5 million. Josh Bowler joining Southampton on what was a 2 million transfer fee. The Canadian talent Richie Laryea is joining Trabzonspor on a 2 million transfer. And finally, Hwang-jo Lee leaves to Bordeaux on a 1.5 million fee. A lot of moves this summer, but I think we're in good shape to begin our season campaign in the Premier League. Our first matchup is going to be at home against Aston Villa. Here's the starting 11. I've opted not to switch around things too much, but still giving the chance to high-profile signings like Gonçalo Inácio. Gibbs White is going to continue his goal scoring, but unfortunately we lose this one 2-1, but we've got some action in the Carabao Cup against Everton, and this is where I decided to experiment with some tactics, giving Andrew the nod to start at goalkeeper, and he's going to manage a clean sheet. We win the match 2-0, so I think this is going to be our thought process and lineup moving forward. We'll review results at the halfway mark, and as we enter the January transfer window, we find ourselves 6th place, and honestly, not that far off from league leaders Manchester City. You will notice some injury problems though, both Traore and Awoniyi out for a few months, so that means Fabio Silva will again get his start at the striker position. We're on a bit of a winning run, and just one fixture remains this season against Newcastle. This is going to decide if we've got Champions League football next year. It's a shame that Andrew will miss this match. He also suffered an injury to leave him out, so we've got to put our faith in Matt Turner. Newcastle, not an easy opponent, but they're not in great form, so I'm hoping that we can get the job done at the City ground. It's pretty ridiculous how much history Nottingham Forest actually have, especially in the 1970s and early 1980s under Brian Clough. First Division champions during the 1977-78 season, and back-to-back European Cup winners in 1979 and 1980. We're going to focus on the match at hand, though, as Newcastle score the first goal in this one. Just a chance that I don't think any goalkeeper is going to save. Fantastic header from Isak, and we'll need to push on and try to find the equalizer, as 1 point will be enough for us to get back into the Champions League. Alonga playing through Gibbs-White, one of the key players in this rebuild so far, has his chance denied as Almiron is now through on goal. He'll play a pass over to Isak, and a good save from Matt Turner. As a fan of the US men's national team myself, it is good to see him thriving in this rebuild, although from a ratings perspective, he probably won't be our long-term starter. But one player we can rely on is Morgan Gibbs-White. Talked about it last season, how he led the club in both goals and assists. It seems like that'll continue this year. Making a change in the 60th minute as our first signing of this rebuild, Fabio Silva, is brought on. Alonga will play this ball in the middle as Fabio Silva finds Gibbs-White. He likes these near post efforts, and in the 88th minute, we will get the go-ahead goal. All but securing our spots in the Champions League next season, and the fact we could do it at home in front of our own fans makes it that much better. Overall, it's been a great tenure so far for Nuno at Nottingham Forest. He's had some great achievements in his career. This might be his biggest project yet, though. The fact that we'll be playing Champions League football once again with Nottingham Forest unlocks so many storylines in its own right, but it's going to be a 4th place Premier League finish, 6th round exit in the FA Cup, and a 4th round exit in the Carabao Cup. Manchester City were league winners with 94 points, just a dominant second half of the season for them. Arsenal and Liverpool joining us in the Champions League next year. Kind of a surprise to see Chelsea sitting in the 10th place spot and Newcastle in 11th. Bournemouth, Brighton, and Leeds will be seeing the drop to the Championship next year. For the Championship, Middlesbrough and West Brom securing that automatic promotion to the Premier League. Despite the 5th place finish, Burnley were Championship playoff winners, so they're also going to be playing in England's top flight. How about this? Brighton got relegated from the Premier League, but they also won the FA Cup, so they're going to be playing European football in the Championship, which is a very rare storyline. Manchester City were Carabao Cup winners against Newcastle. City also won the UEFA Super Cup to start their season against PSV. Borussia Dortmund defeated Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. An all-English Europa League final as Manchester United were victorious against Arsenal, and AZ win an all-Dutch Conference League final against Feyenoord. Back-to-back seasons with Gibbs-White as the club's top goal scorer. 27 from 46 is a pretty good tally. He had the 4th most goals in the Premier League, just a dominant performance though from Erling Haaland with 39 goals from 38 appearances. And just shy of the double-digit mark for Gibbs-White on the assist front, he was still tied for the 5th most assists in the Premier League. And how about that transfer from Frenkie de Jong joining Manchester City and making his mark? Pretty good year for Andrew, tied for the 2nd most clean sheets in the Prem, just one behind league leader Ederson. I don't think it's a shock that Gonzalo Inacio is now the highest valued player at the club, a +4 in his rating this season, up to an 85, and a few players that are either retiring or leaving the club at the end of this season. Chris Wood down 5 in his rating to a 68 overall, and John Joe Shelby down 2 in his rating to a 73. Just a single loan update to talk about. Andre Brito, our Portuguese goalkeeper, is up +5 in his rating during a Stuttgart loan spell. I set up 3 scouting networks this season, keeping our scout in Portugal for 9 months, looking for any type of player. He managed to find a left winger who has already got a 70 overall rating. The 16-year-old has 89 to 94 potential. Also establishing a network in Wales as we search for a right winger. This, of course, is based off of one of Nottingham Forest's most exceptional youth academy talents. Brennan Johnson just left the club for Spurs, but Tony Jenkins might be his regen, a 68 overall right winger from Wales. The 17-year-old has 82 to 94 potential. You can pick any number of English talents that came up through Nottingham Forest Youth Academy. For example, Brian Clough, who was a fantastic coach for them. But as we search for any type of player, we managed to find a goalkeeper with Aaron Alexander. He's got a 65 rating and 83 to 89 potential. We're making waves with this Nottingham Forest squad, Season 3 in the Champions League, and I think we're going to need to continue making improvements across the board if we want to stay competitive. One of our main board objectives is to actually finish the season with a significant profit margin, but for domestic success, trying to repeat performances and qualify for the Champions League, reach the semi-final of the FA Cup, and for continental success, reach the quarter-final in the Champions League. Our budget has more than doubled, up to 120 million. That number is going to go up as we offload some players, starting with Awoniyi. Just don't think he has the rating that we're looking for, and it's unfortunate that his time at Nottingham Forest wasn't quite as successful as when he was at Union Berlin in the Bundesliga. Still, 25 million is a pretty good sum to receive for him. Another outgoing departure with Mangala joining Fulham on a 12.5 million deal. Scott McKenna is off to Burnley for 4 million. I don't think it's much of a surprise that our first order of business is to add a new striker. I've been a big fan of Joshua Zirkzee for several years, even when he was at Bayern, not getting a whole lot of play time. It's always going to be tough when you're playing behind a great striker like Robert Lewandowski. He did have a couple of successful loan moves though, most recently at Anderlecht, which sparked a transfer away to Bologna in the summer of 2022. Kind of a slow start to life for him, only netting 2 goals and 2 assists last season, but this year it's been a different story. 7 Serie A goals along with 1 goal in the Italian Cup. Not only is he an aerial presence, but he's got great dribbling ability, a knack for scoring goals, and even setting up his teammates with assists. I think he'll be getting a call up to the Netherlands at the senior level pretty soon. This is probably the most expensive transfer we've had so far, 35 million as Zirkzee joins us here in the Premier League. It's slightly more than his 33.5 million valuation, but we've got a striker that is capable of playing Champions League football. It was a surprise to see Mark Gahey over in the Championship at Leeds at an 82 rating, even higher than that of Zirkzee's rating. He got his start at Chelsea in their youth academy. Similar to Zirkzee, had some loan spells that were promising, like at Swansea, and he really has thrived since his move to Crystal Palace. Not only is he a physical presence in defense, he's also a ball-playing center back and has some exceptional technical flair. As far as English center back transfers go, this is on the lower side of things. 35 million for a player that has featured at the national level. We've done a great job pacing out these transfers, and now we're adding some world-class quality players. That doesn't mean we're going to completely forget about these hidden gems like that in the Portuguese league. Miguel Maga is another player that doesn't feature for a massive club in Portugal, but holds a pretty good potential. He's consistently coming off the bench for Vitória Guimarães and prefers a right wing back role, which of course is what we're using here at Nottingham Forest. Our least expensive transfer of the summer as Maga joins us for 12.5 million. He's immediately going to be competing for the starting spot though, and I think similar to some of our recent signings, he should have pretty decent potential when we brought him in for less than his valuation. Now that we've qualified for Champions League football, we can't fly under the radar in the Premier League. It's going to be a tough start to our season campaign as we begin against Manchester United. Still though, only one player in our starting 11 hasn't yet achieved an 80 overall rating, and Morgan Gibbs-White now taking over as captain for the squad. But some very exciting signings this summer. We really utilized our 100+ million in the transfer budget. Despite all that, we still can't win our opening fixture as United defeat us 3-1. We will focus though a lot on the Champions League in Season 3. We've got a group consisting of PSG, Benfica, and Anderlecht. The Benfica Youth Academy talent Gonzalo Ramos over at PSG, now up to an 85 rating. Alan Velasco making the transfer away from MLS to Portugal as he's now at an 80 overall. And finally, Kasper Dolberg. He used to be one of those high potential players in career mode, and he's still at a 77 rating at Anderlecht. Overall, we fared pretty well in the Champions League, a 2-2 draw in our opening fixture against PSG, and another draw against Anderlecht. That'll put us to match day 3, where we face Benfica, a team that Nuno probably knows well from his time at Porto. And if we do want to reach the knockout stages, we can't just be getting draws, so we'll try to change the narrative in this fixture. I think we have a pretty strong advantage going into this matchup. Not only are we playing at home, but a lot of our players will know Benfica talents well. It's going to be a chance for Benfica to start off the match, going just narrowly wide. And as we approach the halftime break, off of a set piece, it's Dominguez who finds a long-range effort saved by Trubin. He is going to be one of the higher potential talents in career mode, actually, and he pulled off save after save in this one. That chance in stoppage time denying the effort, and into the second half, We're now past the 60th minute, and another huge save by Trubin to deny the goal. This one ends up scoreless, so our draws are going to continue. As we match up against our Champions League opponents again, we've got hope for some good results in simulated fixtures. We'll review results going into January, starting in the Premier League, and we have dropped off a bit compared to last season. We're in the 9th place spot, not completely out of European football qualification hopes, but we'll need to turn things around. In the Champions League, though, it was a very close performance between us, PSG, and Benfica. We narrowly advanced to the knockouts with 10 points. Unlike last season, we don't have many injury concerns, but I am looking to make an upgrade at the central center back position. I just think that if we want to make a run in the Champions League, we need to improve the quality of this team. And we'll continue to look at players from some of Nuno's former sides. David Carmo is a Braga Youth Academy talent that has recently transferred over to Porto. He's going to provide a strong presence in the back for us with a couple of pacey center backs around him. He's also shown some pretty good resilience, missing the 2020-2021 season with a broken ankle, but coming back with good performances enough to warrant a transfer to a big side like Porto. Surprisingly, it only cost us 15 million to pull off this deal in the January transfer window. Another case where the player's contract was probably running out pretty soon and they were willing to offload him for a discounted price. But moving forward to the Champions League knockouts, we have a great opponent matchup for storylines. We've got Braga in the round of 16. Brian Brobbey has been in great form recently and he's transferred over to the side at an 83 rating. It was a 2-1 result in the opening fixture, and we can't yet play the second leg because we have a cup final against Newcastle. This is the Carabao Cup, a great way for us to secure European football early on in the season. And unlike the last time we matched Newcastle, they're in much better form. I want to say this is the first time we're not actually featuring a gameplay match at the City ground, and instead we'll be playing this fixture at Wembley. Still a great occasion though, having the opportunity to reach a cup final and lift the first silverware of the rebuild. We'll start the highlights with a set piece, and Dominguez has his effort cleared off the line by Bruno Guimaraes. We'll keep hold of possession though as Carmo plays over to Gahey. He plays the ball through to Gibbs White, and the chance going over the crossbar. Newcastle with the next opportunity. Bueno with the initial clearance, but it's going to be Luis Alberto who has his shot saved by Andrew. He's proven to be a pretty decent goalkeeper for us. Not the highest potential talent, but making stop after stop. I can only wonder if he didn't have that short-term injury spell where his rating might be at. But we're into the 90th minute. Not a whole lot of chances for either side, but it's Isak who scored against us last time. He'll score against us again as he picks up the winner for Newcastle and Eddie Howe's players. We were close to reaching extra time and maybe having this match go to penalties, but it will be Newcastle that lift the silverware. It's been a strong start to life for Eddie Howe since he took over at the club. It's pretty cool to see another historic English side being successful. Fortunately, there's still a lot for us to play for this season. We'll finish up February and head into March as we play the second leg of our round of 16 fixture in the Champions League. This time we were victorious 2-0 and advanced 4-1 on aggregate. Our next opponent is going to be Inter in the quarterfinals. Gabriel Martinelli transferring away from Arsenal, now at an 88 rating for Inter. First leg 2-0 in our favor, goals coming from Sangare and Zirkzee. Another 2-0 scoreline in the second leg means we advance 4-0 on aggregate into the semifinals against Barcelona. It's fun to see Thiago returning back to his youth academy club despite being up there in age. It was a 1-1 draw in the opening fixture. The second leg was scoreless, which means that after extra time, we're going to see penalty kicks decide the winner and who advances to the Champions League final. Robert Lewandowski will start things off. His efforts, after a bit of a stutter, will go to his left as Barca take the lead. Zirkzee up next, the other former Bayern talent, puts things in basically the same spot to keep it level. Torres with the chipped effort down the middle means that Barca now take the league. Morgan Gibbs White can score goals for fun, but maybe penalty kicks aren't his strongest area. Rafinha up next, and Barca are absolutely clinical with their penalty chances. We've got a CDM in Sangare up next, and Ter Stegen, one of the higher rated goalkeepers in career mode. is able to pull off this save. That means that Kokcu has a chance to put Barca through to a Champions League final. He's going to do just that. They are much more experienced in this regard, reaching the latter stages of the Champions League. Xavi now returning to a Champions League final as a coach after doing it a few times as a player. Overall, it was still a very strong season for Nuno at Forest. We achieved that 4th place finish in the Premier League, which will put us back in the Champions League next year. City repeat as winners despite a significantly fewer points tally in the Prem. Chelsea and Liverpool joining us in the Champions League next season. Arsenal were the team that underperformed this year as they finished 11th and sit mid-table. Crystal Palace, West Brom, and Middlesbrough in the relegation zone. As for the championship, Leeds and Bournemouth both earning promotion back to the Premier League. 5th place team once again were playoff winners as Norwich will be joining them next season. Manchester United defeat Aston Villa in the FA Cup final. Of course, we lost to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. Dortmund defeating Manchester United in the UEFA Super Cup to start the season. Barca reached the final and defeated PSG in the Champions League. Eintracht Frankfurt seem to be Europa League winners on a consistent basis as they win against Fenerbahce. And Spurs add a trophy in the Conference League, defeating Antwerp 3-1. Finally, we have a new top goal scorer at the club, Xerxes with 26 from 55. It ranked him tied for the 4th most goals in the Prem and just shy of that 20-goal mark. Alonga having a great year, up to an 86 rating. He has surprisingly been one of the better players in this rebuild. 13 assists off of 56 appearances. He was tied for the 3rd most assists in the league, with Mo Salah leading the way. Unfortunately, the performances from Andrew seem to have dropped off. He's down to outside of the top 5 for Premier League clean sheets. And this is what I mean about some of these underrated talents. Miguel Maga up to an 83 overall, really experiencing a lot of growth as a wingback. We've got a few loan updates to check on. Tony Jenkins up +7 to a 75 rating while at Crystal Palace. Aaron Alexander up +4 during a Sunderland loan spell. Andre Brito almost ready for substitute action as he's up +3 to a 77 overall. And our other Portuguese youth academy talent is Da Costa. He's up +5 during a Braga loan spell. We'll cover England once again, searching for any type of player, and we've got Bradley Carr, a 69 rated right winger. He's only 15 years old, but he's got 89 to 94 potential. No surprise as we cover Portugal once again, searching for any type of talent. This time we have a 66 rated right winger in Vasco Montero. He's got 83 to 94 potential. Kind of a niche shout here, but Andy Reid played a lot of matches, scored a lot of goals, and provided a lot of assists for Nottingham Forest. So I ended up searching for a technically gifted left winger from the Republic of Ireland. Ryan McCormack, a 65 rated talent. The left winger has 87 to 93 potential. We'll have another go at the Champions League in Season 4 and see if our luck is any different. Honestly, our starting 11 doesn't need many improvements and just a couple of storyline transfers to keep this save going. We'll try to add 2 players of a different nationality than that of the club for domestic success, trying to win the Premier League, win the FA Cup, and for continental success, reaching the final of the Champions League. Our budget up to 175 million. I actually referred to Diogo Costa earlier on, and I think it's about time that he moves away from Porto. He's probably been ready for a while now, and he's definitely considered one of the better young modern goalkeepers in the world. I have seen a couple of discussions saying that he could just be a lifelong Porto player, which would be really interesting and not something that you see all that often in the current game. But y'all probably know already about him. He's got heaps of potential in career mode, and we signed him for 80 million. When you get a couple of seasons in, the funds don't matter all that much, and we're just adding an exceptional talent at the back for us. Another player that I eventually wanted to return back to Nottingham Forest is Brennan Johnson, who honestly is doing pretty well over at Spurs. He's a young talent after all, so plenty of time for him to progress his game. But he's had a quick rise to stardom, playing in League One in 2021, Championship the next year, in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest the year after that, and most recently he's spending the Premier League season at Spurs, so something different every year for him. It'll be a 30 million fee to see Brennan Johnson return here at Nottingham Forest. slightly above his 24.5 million valuation, and he could start as a player off the bench for us and maybe earn some more game time. Callum Hudson-Odoi requested a transfer away, and he will join Juventus on a 35 million fee. Matt Turner also looking to make the move on. He's going to be joining PSV in the Eredivisie for 7.5 million. Actually, quite a realistic transfer there with all their American signings as of late. But it's another start to the season against Manchester United and another home match. This starting 11 is one of the strongest that I've managed to build in FC24. I think Diogo Costa could be the difference for us in what we can achieve this season. And finally, we win a Premier League opener against United 2-1, an 81st minute winner from Xerxes. But we'll finish up August and head into September, our first Champions League fixture against Juventus. We've got them, Real Betis, and Henk in our group. Running through some of the players, of course, we've got Hudson-Odoi over at Juventus. Bunu, a pretty highly rated goalkeeper at Real Betis, despite getting up there in age. And finally, Cuesta, a 79 rated Colombian talent for Henk. Obviously, big expectations for us this season in the Champions League. Whether we can meet those, I'm not sure, but it'll all start against probably our toughest opponent in the group, Juventus. They built a strong starting 11, and they'll be a good first test. Once again, another match at the City Ground. For any of you Nottingham Forest fans, I'd love to hear in the comment section if you have any memories of their winning spell in the 70s and 80s, or maybe you have relatives that can experience that. But we're going to start things on a really positive note. Not the best of efforts from Bueno, but good dribbling to get himself in that situation. Nice hold up from Xerxes, really showcasing what his unique build is about as he finds Dominguez, and Chesney pulling off another good stop. Brennan Johnson getting his first bit of action as a returnee Nottingham Forest player in the 54th minute. And it's going to be Gibbs White who holds the play, finds Sangare over to Johnson, back with middle to Alanga, and another stop from Chesney. Of course, a former Premier League goalkeeper at Arsenal, and he has been pulling off save after save, and I'm still shocked that he has such a high rating in career mode, and he certainly showed it in this match. I don't know what was up with us playing against all these great goalkeepers, but it's going to be Keane with a chance to put Juventus ahead, but a good job from Diogo Costa to deny that effort. We were very unlucky not to get the winner here. The Juve defense bending but not breaking, and it's just going to be one more set piece for them to defend against. Cleared away initially, Alanga with an effort, ref letting us play on a little bit longer, but ultimately Dominguez's efforts will go wide, and we're going to start our Champions League campaign this year with just a single point. I think we're getting flashbacks to how we performed last season. With an improved squad, I do like our odds of where we might finish in the Premier League and the Champions League. We are going to review results at the halfway mark for the Prem. We're just outside of Champions League qualification, 8 points off of Manchester City for the top spot, and we finished top of our Champions League group, just losing one match out of the 6, so it's going to be us and Juventus advancing to the knockout rounds. No real concerns in our starting 11, just a few players unhappy that are featuring off the bench. So our first fixture in the knockout rounds is going to be Atletico Madrid in the round of 16. They've got a Portuguese talent with Nuno Mendes making the transfer away, and it was a 1-1 scoreline in the opening fixture. We managed a 3-0 win in the second leg though, putting us through 4-1 on aggregate up against RB Leipzig in the quarterfinals. Here Troida finally making the move from Feyenoord, and with a very realistic transfer to the Bundesliga. Another draw in the opening leg, but we were victorious in the second fixture. 2-1 on aggregate puts us through to the semifinals against Milan. Darwin Nunez making a move in his career, transferring from Liverpool to Milan, up to an 87 rating, and it was a 2-2 draw in the opening fixture. A lot of draws in the first leg, but we keep on winning in the second leg. We advance 3-2 on aggregate into a Champions League final against PSG. Before we can play that fixture, we're going to review all results. Unable to win the Premier League, but still maintaining a top 4 finish, with Manchester City achieving a three-peat at the top of the table. Newcastle continue to struggle in this save, 11th place sitting mid-table, and for the relegation zone, Watford, Bournemouth, and Norwich will see the drop to the championship. It's Brighton and Crystal Palace that secure automatic promotion back to the Premier League. Southampton were championship playoff winners in the 3rd place spot. Manchester United defeating Everton in the FA Cup. Leeds were victorious in the Carabao Cup, winning that match on penalties. Barcelona defeating Frankfurt to start the season in the UEFA Super Cup. Skipping by the Champions League for now, we've got the Europa League final. Betis were the winners against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Villarreal winning the Conference League against Club Brugge. Another good goal output from Zirkzee, 38 goals across 54 appearances this season. He ranked as the 4th best goal scorer in the Premier League. Jack Grealish going past the 30 mark, which was good for him. And on the assist category, it's Zirkzee again, 12 assists from 54 appearances. He ranks tied for 2nd in the Prem, with Pedri actually making the transfer to Spurs and leading the league. Pretty good debut season from Costa. He was tied for the 4th most clean sheets in the league. After reviewing all those stats, we will once again see a Player of the Season award. Starting to notice this a little bit more often in my saves. I'm not sure if this came as a result of a squad update or a game update, but a big shout out to Zirkzee. He's been a fantastic signing in this Nottingham Forest squad. It's a big match ahead and some tough opponents. Can we return Nottingham Forest as Champions League winners? Somewhat of a home advantage for us here, as we'll be playing this match at Old Trafford, not having to travel as far as PSG. And we're going to start with the highlights. It's Bueno that is going to push up from that right wing back position. Unfortunately, the cross doesn't connect, but we start with some early chances. Now Gibbs White playing through Zirkzee. He's holding up the play. I thought this could have been a penalty, not called by the ref though. And we're into the 86th minute. Not long left in this match. Zirkzee through on goal. We just can't seem to get the chances by Donnarumma, so we will head into extra time after largely keeping PSG's strong attack in check. But any of you that know football or play career mode will know that PSG are tough to stop for 90 minutes, let alone 120 minutes. It's Marcus Llorente that will get the go-ahead goal in the 113th minute, pushing up and finally getting the first goal in this match. That first goal was the only goal scored, and PSG, a big fixture for them as they finally will be lifting their first Champions League trophy as a club. It was great that we were able to reach this mark with Nottingham Forest, just one step short of beginning a new legacy as Champions League winners.